Welcome back, everyone. Straight up, we have got some pretty damn cool news. So, Frost Giant have unveiled a little bit about their game, Stormgate. We're also able to talk about Notorious Studios, who are actually partnering up with OTK, who are coming on as an investor, I believe. And we know a little bit more about their game project as well.
Yep.
For a little bit of, I guess, the upfront bit. I did the press briefing with Frost Giant like a few days before they went live with their big reveal, so I'm going to communicate with you everything that I know and understand from that project, which to me is a very exciting one because it's basically StarCraft 3. You look at what happened to Team 1 at Blizzard, the StarCraft 2 team, and they kind of got wound down. Evidently, Blizzard were far more interested in shifting resources over to Diablo 4, maybe Overwatch 2. I think obviously in a situation where just StarCraft would never be the priority in that studio because it has like an incredible potential, but maybe not as ridiculously incredible as the sorts of things that they maybe want from some of their other games, which is why it's so important that studios like this actually exist and are kind of out there receiving the funding they need to make games like legit, straight up spiritual successor to StarCraft 2. That's massive for me. Then, of course, with Notorious, that's Chris and the team. So they have unveiled a little bit of Project Honor, also their relationship with OTK, which itself is a pretty damn cool thing. It's funny, me and Chris, we meant to do like an interview or something on YouTube, but timing just did not work out like a while ago last year. So, yeah, I mean, we'll do Notorious first, I suppose, because they are, in fact, up here first in the dock. So they say their mission is to unite players within Deep Worlds. We are a video game studio startup founded by former developers of World of Warcraft and named after our guild of 17 years. So it's a class-based online action RPG where you're going for solo adventures or adventures with friends to get loot and resources to gear out your character. Now, when you hear action RPG, you might be thinking of no, it's not what you're thinking of. Third-person camera. I mean, these are Warcraft people. I know for a fact they are trying really hard to innovate on what the actual class like combat gameplay is going to be within the traditional fantasy archetype, so I think that's quite exciting. And it's kind of interesting because they're definitely saying it's not an MMO. They're saying you're going out for adventure solo or with friends to get loot and resources. Kind of makes me think of like a Tarkov-ish vibe is perhaps going on, which, tell you what, that's not the sort of thing I really see done much in a fantasy world. And I think there's a really good opportunity there. I mean, if you've got like a cool base for your guild or some sort of like home-ish related place, kind of going these adventures into, I guess, maps that are kind of like spun up, stuff going on them. Could be a really interesting way for them to get a lot of gameplay.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, that sounds exactly like what I guess the old school of World of Warcraft always felt like to me.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't, it felt like an MMO, but it was like a small enough scale MMO because you only met a couple players out in the world while you were leveling. And you did go specifically on adventures for gear and resources. But not adventures like Anthem or Outriders or even some of Borderlands does that, where it's, here's a mission, here's a map table, click the map, we'll load you into a very beautiful mission, work away. It seems to be more the, like you said, the Tarkov kind of thing of, there is a world, it has stuff in it, you go through the world and you get stuff there. That's kind of the vibe I'm more imagining of these. Because I mean, I am fully expecting this to be, hey, we've taken the best parts of World of Warcraft that we really loved and improved upon them in a load of ways and give them to you, which is what I fully expect here. And that's where, like, you see the same trends, and I hear, you know, go with your friends to get loot and resources, and generally I'm like, not another division, but in this case, with them talking about an open world, I'm like, I can see with the pedigree where they want to go with this.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure they're not interested in doing a sort of division style thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's just that's the kind of problem when all of the same terminology has been hijacked.
Though, in fairness, if you were to do, like, if there is anything to grab from the division, it's probably the Dark Zones. And, like, the PvPvE aspect, which I thought was, like, the really cool part of the division. So, immersive, dangerous world built in Unreal Engine 5. Between them and also Frost Giant, we're seeing studios use UE5. I think a sort of situation where they can get the stylization they want, but they can get that real just next level of lighting, a lot of those performance benefits, and I think a lot of production pipeline things that allow these smaller teams, because like Frost Giant are almost certainly a smaller team than Team 1 who did StarCraft. Notorious, I think, are almost certainly smaller than the World of Warcraft development team. but maybe it seems that the modern tools are helping them out here. Talking about the ultimate class fantasy. They want to deliver the ultimate experience of playing core RPG classes like Mage, Warrior, and Priest with unique, class-specific gameplay and role-defining character art. I think that is actually... I think I saw an early version of this this Mage character whenever I was talking with those guys. Like, oh man, it was last year. And yeah, I mean, arts, like the two guys I talked to were Cole and Eric, who, I mean... like the core, like some of the like legit straight up key art of World of Warcraft expansions, and just many things that you'll recognize. So it's a super strong art team. Yeah, action combat reimagined. We're rethinking the standard RPG combat system, featuring an immersive third-person camera with melee combat spells and abilities, all geared towards an engaging multiplayer PvPvE experience. The one thing that I really like got the impression of with, you know, from talking to Chris, is like games you're playing with your guild.
Yeah.
That's really what they're wanting to deliver. And to be honest, if I can get some of this, but like it's kind of outside of the context of just doing more Mythic Plus dungeon runs or just a World of Warcraft raid, I feel like there is a massively fresh space that we can actually have these core fantasies operate within, that doesn't just involve dungeons and raids, and the very numbery focus of a game like World of Warcraft, which I think is the sort of thing that's just afforded to them by a fresh start. Like in terms of their deals, like I know they're very reverent of like Samwise's work in Warcraft, Chris Metzen's work in Warcraft, but I guess like it's just seeing that with the newest generation tools, design sensibilities, etc. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think is really interesting, is consistently hearing Chris, I think specifically, talk about player experience. Because I know it was even talking about the fact that Riot are one of their investors, and how that was like talking about Riot. They're the people who always really, obviously they can world build really well, but they clearly love the player experience and care about it, and that's why all their games are so generally good when they come out. Obviously there's some issues here and there, they're not perfect, but they do have like the player experience is core. And that's why when they talk about the class fantasy so much, that's where I kind of go, okay, this is the stuff that I think especially a lot of modern game design misses.
Yes.
So much of it is data driven, so much of it is logical and scientific in a way. A lot of it misses the fact that we're all just, maybe saying this isn't quite fair, but we're all just basically, even if you've never played D&D, a lot of gamers are just big D&D nerds at heart, in the way of they like that sense of adventure, that sense of fantasy, that kind of, it's about the feeling you get, not about what you're doing. It's never been about what you physically do, because otherwise no one would have liked games when they were in the 80s and had no quality whatsoever. It's all about where you imagine yourself and like the feeling of it. And that's where the class fantasy and the sense of this open world adventure is probably going to, like, if they can manage to get it right, it'll be really, really strong. Because it is that part that's been missing. Just this isn't about how intellectually you're solving your gameplay patterns or how intellectually you're building your character around this. This is how you feel. Do you feel as, you know, a priest, a stereotypical priest? Do you feel like you're properly supporting people? Do you feel like you're healing people? Do you feel like you're doing stuff like mind control on enemies? Do you feel like you've got that going for you? As a mage, do you feel like, because Dragon's Dogma was like the perfect example of this recently, God, that game's old now, but Dragon's Dogma 2 maybe, but the mage, the wizard class is, yeah, I have to stand in the back. If the griffin comes for me, I'm fucked. But if I get uninterrupted, I will summon a tornado that will devastate this countryside. That feel of everything is just that. That's what you feel. The kind of thing you walk away and go, oh, that was good. I can't really explain why, but it was good.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're aiming for.
That's what I love with Dragon's Dogma. It's funny, even one of the design considerations we've had for something we might be working on, it's like, we're thinking about combat, and it's like, right, well, if we just kind of do, you know, maybe some JRPG style combat, or maybe some like tile or hex based combat, it's going to feel like a hitbox is attacking another hitbox, not like it's a kraken, because we can't make a fight between a dude and a kraken actually feel like a fight between a dude and a kraken. But then it's like, okay, well, if we take some inspiration from Disco Elysium and from Shadow of the Colossus, people are going to think Shadow of the Colossus, oh, so you mean you're going to have like a really in-depth, like super expensive... No. It's about the resultant feel, and that's why Disco Elysium's combat, which is happening on a text strip, feels so good, because they can really recognize all of the, like, your choices, your roles, your builds and stuff like that through their combat system, even though it's just playing out on a little strip of text, because it turns out it's about the overall fantasy that you're delivering. And that was like a really key design insight for us. Yes. I'm hoping that the fresh start really does shake up things, because I think we're all used to, just a lot of the fantasy classes. They just feel what they feel like in MMOs. And a lot of that I do like, but I want to see what this feels like in a action-based game in UE5. That seems awesome.
Yeah, especially when you've got that small scale and you've got the PvE elements. It's like, I think Esfand on the OTK Games Expo was talking about an ability was like a ball and chain for a warrior. So can you be a warrior who's got, you've got the physical strength to hold something in place?
Oh, for this?
Yeah, for Project Honor,
yeah. Chris ran me through. This is like, oh man. He ran me through the full like ball and chain example and some of what I think they're trying to do with like weapons. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, really cool. But they are at that very early stage yet, which is a little bit unlike Frost Giant, who are our next company we're going to talk about. And Frost Giant they're a little bit more ahead on things. So that's the crack with them. Blizzard, they've all been there as of October. They're all Blizzard people as of October 2021.
Grown a bit then since. I'm not sure if they're all still Blizzard, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw in one of the interviews they just said like, man, it's hard to hire people in the current environment.
Yeah.
It's like that's just what the game sort of job market is like in that region. But yeah, look, super strong team. I think a super strong vision. Very excited to see where it goes. I know that they are 100% there with the community. That's like initially part of why Chris reached out to me. I believe reached out to like tips and tips, Rich, Asmongold, etc. over at OTK, which seemingly led to a really good thing going on between the two of them, which is also really awesome. I think that just solidifies in their company structure, even I suppose some of their financial model, the importance of community, which I think is a great thing to have from the ground up. Yep. Now our next thing then is Stormgate. This is like straight up. This is spiritual successor to StarCraft 2, in my opinion. And from what I've seen of this, looks awesome. Now, I saw some people. It was interesting because I got the impression anyway that like they were, maybe a little bit nervous with the reveal. And I think everyone is.
Of course.
My best read, and this is literally not confirmed to me, because there is a degree of stylization, and I think they were worried that maybe not going like UE5 hyper real would kind of like maybe worry some people or something. What I will say is I think that this will look so goddamn incredible in motion, and I think it is going to feel so good in terms of gameplay. Now, there is actually one reason why I think that really is going to be the case from the Blizzard heritage, but I just think that this is an art style that is hyper readable, and I think will just really lend itself well to a game that feels incredible to play. I think about, say, Warcraft 3 Reforged. Its assets, they're suddenly more photoreal, they're less stylized, they're higher resolution textures, they have more angles, more lines, and then you look at combat in War 3 Reforged, and it's awful. It's so much less readable than it was in base Warcraft 3. So what they have done here in terms of art style, I think is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. And here's a cool thing. So you see all this lighting here in this top scene? I mean, this is all like, I think in the global illumination system of UE5. So that actually means that some of the visual spectacle, so I think broadly speaking, they are around the same size of armies as StarCraft 2, perhaps slightly bigger. I believe they have heroes as well, which, I mean, if I think about heroes in a Blizzard game, obviously Warcraft 3, I'd also say obviously Heroes of the Storm.
Of course, yeah.
Heroes of the Storm, which had its heroes that felt so good. And the other thing too is like the pathfinding, the actual logic that the game is running on, from the kind of presentation, what they were talking about with me, that's all very custom. And they continually talked about how one of the pillars of the Blizzard RTS is just the level of responsiveness, the way that the pathfinding worked. And suffice to say, I am very sure that that lineage is going to directly carry through into this game.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I saw a lot of after this reveal, which was people, obviously, you can't really show, especially when your game's not done, you can't show your game in full motion. You can't even really do that an awful lot at a show like the Game Awards because that takes a little bit too long. And unless you're Modern Warfare 2, you're not going to be allowed the time to do that.
Yeah.
Not that really worked out for them too well anyway. But the cinematic stuff was like, people expected it to be Blizzard tier cinematics, but they don't have the Blizzard cinematic team. And I feel like this game is going to be something that stands out substantially more as this literally plays like, or will literally play like the successor to a good StarCraft
Like,
or a good Heroes of the Storm
even on
or a
that
good Warcraft.
cinematic, knowing what their team size is compared to the resources they would have had at Blizzard, like that cinematic is just happening in UE5. It's like really, really impressive for the team size that they're dealing with.
It's just that it didn't sell the game's gameplay, which is its focus, which is the strength of it. And I think that's where
they're
people
not
are
at the stage where they're able to show off the gameplay fully.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think like a decent couple of people were like very much kind of almost had the wrong expectations, the wrong idea from that. Expected more than was there, but it's more that like as a holistic game, this is supposed to be so much more than a cinematic will ever show off, and also that was just kind of just a cinematic.
Yeah, and like one thing I can say, looking at what the RTS community, a lot of people I follow, I mean, Grubby, Bloco, Winter, etc. There's a lot of very positive buzz in the RTS community about this game as well, because they're the people who truly know what's up, right? So as for what we're getting here, basically big story missions. I kind of love what's going on. So post-apocalyptic, the apocalypse it's demons.
It's very Doom. Yeah,
it's demons. Now they're not just straight up bad evil demons. There's more to the demons.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's the two factions. We've got the sort of the humans. We got the demons. Who knows what the third will be? I think they kind of like want at least 3. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some more.
Fairly sure they confirmed at least 3 in the talk at the Game Awards. Some people didn't quite see that and were like, 2 factions, what's going on? But
and of course that's a pillar of Blizzard.
Yeah.
RTS, the asymmetry in the factions. That's something they're very much doing, and it's the sort of thing they're certainly like between what I saw and talking. They're very clear that this is a game in the lineage of Warcraft 3 and StarCraft. It is. You are supposed to think that. The point, I think, is that StarCraft 3 was never going to happen. Maybe with Microsoft that could change, but I think the point is that like the people who really just had a burning passion to actually make the next great Blizzard real-time strategy game happen, they're now trying to make this.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I kind of noticed. I was thinking about this a little bit. Obviously, Project Honor's not an MMO, but I was thinking of like the MMO trend and where World of Warcraft came from. And World of Warcraft came from a load of, and this was actually worse than this, because it came from a load of people who were playing EverQuest, really loved the core fantasy, really loved the core player experience, but the EverQuest team weren't delivering on that quite as much as they liked. So they went, no, we will go and we will make this at Blizzard. We will make something better. We'll make something that the players want more, because we are players, we know what that is. And that was a bunch of inexperienced people doing that, and they went and made World of Warcraft. And they, obviously the same with kind of the Warcraft stuff. Warcraft came from them. But it's like, it's the same thing happening again, where these people weren't able to do that at Blizzard, but they know what they're doing. Because these are the people who made those games, the people who trained at Blizzard, the people who were there for years and years and years. And they're like, no, we'll spin out and give players what they want more specifically. And I think that's a case of, that's where so much of great video games come from. It's like, I can't make what I know players want here. I'll go somewhere else and do that. And it's the cycle continuing, but this time the cycle has substantially more trained and equipped people actually behind it, which is really exciting to me.
Yeah. For other aspects then, social RTS. So basically, like 1v1, classic StarCraft style, that's totally a thing. Very much majorly supported. But they do want this to be a game that can be played with friends, so campaign missions can be co-op. They have an open-ended co-op mode that supports 3 players. That actually has, it was kind of described to me, there's actually loot for your heroes. They're actually, you can get more loot and stuff as you're going like through those co-op games. And it sort of stems from the things that they really wanted to do with StarCraft 2's co-op commanders. Right. Turns out Star 2 co-op commanders were like the super successful feature of the game. But they they were always developing, and there was like, well, this update might be our last. We don't know if we're going to get to keep on making this. Yeah. So I think it's like now they're fully making that as a game mode, like the way they want to from the start with all those lessons. And then, of course, 1v1, which has now got the whole built-in tournament system. So, grassroots esports, like the way that it should be done, that's basically all supported in client. Excellent. And they are, so they know what's up. I think they've seen all the lessons learned by StarCraft 2's, over a decade journey in esports. Also, the game is free to play. So basically, it's free to play like StarCraft 2. So you get the campaign initially for free. If you want like more chapters of the campaign, then those are there for a purchase. There's also cosmetic purchases. This is the sort of thing that just literally worked really well for StarCraft 2. It's just that it's not Diablo 4. It was never going to make D4 money, even though it was a super healthy, like brilliant game. So I think this is great. This is really important for the longevity of this game, especially because that's then coming in with their editor. I saw a little screenshot actually of their editor. I don't know if they have that like put out public in their press kit or anything.
I think they do, but yeah.
But their editor looks really cool. And I mean, yeah, like, need I say anything else? Even if it's just basic tug of war games, all the RPGs that people would just build in the StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 editor, that plus free to play is actually kind of massive.
For sure. Yeah.
So as for the team, Tim Morton, former production director of StarCraft 2 and Command & Conquer Generals 2. Tim Campbell, game director and president, former game director of Wasteland 3. Lead campaign designer of Frozen Throne. Remember that? Their chief architect, James, former lead engineer in StarCraft 2, and that's a game that felt brilliant. Carol LaForge, who was the former senior program manager, Blizzard Esports, and also co-founder of Day9 TV. Didn't know that.
Yep.
And you just keep on going, Jesse, former lead artist in StarCraft 2, principal artist Diablo 4, another lead designer in StarCraft 2, creator of GameHeart. Kevin is the lead co-op designer, who is the lead co-op designer on StarCraft 2. Project manager for Team Liquid. As you just keep on going on, like it's people who know, like they know what's up. So
yeah, that's the thing that I think is really, really crazy to me, because there's one other example that I think, and we're at that point in time where there's a lot of spin-off studios and not really many of them have made anything yet. There've been a couple that have maybe not gone to plan, like Disintegration from Halo Man, but the one thing I think of is, especially, it's actually very kind of almost poetic because it's Activision, but Infinity Ward.
Hi.
Infinity Ward bled all their staff because Activision were bastards to them, wouldn't let them make the games they wanted, treated them poorly, just farm money out of them. Activision Blizzard were doing largely the same thing to these developers, and they're like, no, we will just go and make what we're really good at making, and we're going to make it. Go fuck yourself, Blizzard. And that's the case of, I imagine, like, even looking at like Respawn staff, you're like, yeah, okay, there's all of the people who made first person shooters what they are today, and here here's all the people who made RTS what it is today.
Yeah.
Obviously they haven't been allowed to do very much, but now they're off Blizzard's yoke. They can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, and with all these new engines, they are just allowing smaller teams to do things that just were not previously possible. So
So are we? I mean, I don't know. This sounds like it could be like a back of the box quote back in older days, but like the Titanfall 2 of RTSs, the Apex Legends of RTSs, like
in a way, it's Blizzard too.
Yeah.
We've got Notorious kind of doing the Warcraft core fantasy thing.
Yeah.
We've got the big sci-fi with a bit of fantasy RTS from Frost Giant. Like, we got our StarCraft, we got our Warcraft. Who knows? Of course, there's plenty of other studios. There's likes of Second Dinner who've got Marvel Snap, and it's just a really exciting time. There's not too much else for me to say, really. But I think good news from what I've seen of these teams, from what I've talked to, with people from these teams. I think it's just people who get it. It's people who respect the community. It's people who know that like they're only in the position that they're in because of the community, because people actually enjoy the games. They are making the games for people in that community. And there's even just some smart things, like they're really being sure with Stormgate to like make it accessible too. Not accessible, approachable is a better word.
Yeah.
Like as an example, I perfectly building a building, right? So maybe you're building a hatchery. Maybe I shouldn't use Zerg as a comparison because it eats up the drone. But like maybe you're building a command center, right? And if you wait till you have 300 minerals and then build it at your natural or another like a base, if you wait for 300 minerals, then you just have all of this useless travel time as your SCV goes there. So obviously the best way to do it is to send your SCV ahead of time such that as soon as it arrives at the build location where it's going to be, you have the 300 or whatever resources so you can like build the thing. They seemingly have a thing, I forget exactly, so kind of this is off the top of my head, but as an example, you could like go and like say build a barracks or something, and I'm pretty sure it just like grabs a worker. The worker will do that and then go back to what it was doing. So that's like super approachable for a newer player. It's maybe not how I will build every building, especially at the start of a match, but maybe if I'm really overtaxed in the front line and I want to quickly do some macroing at home, that could be just a really nice, sort of bit of UX. Yeah. So they are kind of bringing the innovations to the table as well.
Yeah, because that's an innovation in the RTS realm, but I'll bring something from fighting games where that doesn't sound too innovative, because fighting games have had this whole thing about command inputs, right? Where it's like, okay, well, new players will find it hard to do a Shoryuken input. That just takes time to actually learn to get the muscle memory for that. Same with even quarter circle sometimes. So
I cannot do a quarter circle reliably at all.
So a lot of games have decided to just put all of those skills on one button instead. And then they're like, well, okay, this is kind of pointless because it removes the execution requirement. You've just pulled up the skill floor, but you've also lowered the skill ceiling at the same time. And okay, that's kind of a bit grim. But then a lot of games, especially now, I'm trying to think of one specific example. Is it maybe Strive or is it maybe Granblue? But you got a bonus for doing it properly. So you could do the move with one button, but if you did it with the full input, it would do more damage. And that's a case of that's approachable, and there is a shortcut for people who aren't able to do that yet, so we can get straight into gameplay without this like grinding time of learning all of this. And that sounds exactly like what you just described, where it's having to go take your camera to the worker or have a worker in a command group, make sure and click it, have it build specifically. That's going to probably be fast overall. That's going to be satisfying to do. But just having the slightly easier version is just going to make it a little bit better over time. There is a chance that could go slightly wrong. I trust them not for it to go wrong, because they did say here, like, the user interface is designed to make RTS more approachable by streamlining inputs, automatically sending units to control groups, and enhancing gameplay. We've lowered the skill floor while keeping the ceiling as high as you want to climb. And obviously, I'm sure most developers understand the idea of skill floors and ceilings. Yeah. But if they're just on their Steam page going, yeah, we're keeping the skill ceiling as high as possible, but we are kind of lowering the floor a little bit. It's like, yeah, that's what you need to do. And if you understand that, great, excellent.
Look, just on all accounts, it ain't coming soon. I mean, they're hoping, I think, to have their closed beta be next year, so that's like really cool. But look, it's early days. We're actually starting to learn more about these projects, though. It is an exciting time. At least I can say from talking to people from either companies. They're talking to Chris from Notorious and some of the artists. I'm so bad at names. Heads up PR for Frost Giant. Like they're all losing with passion. They're really.
Jared, was it? Or no? I can't remember. Sorry.
My head is useless. But basically, you can just feel the passion sort of oozing out of them. So they're
Yep, absolutely.
Exciting times. We'll just have to wait a few years, I suppose. But anyway, that's it from us. We are from the ashes of some internal problems of Blizzard. With just seemingly just some developers yearn for a bit of freedom. Now they've got that freedom. We're going to get some really sick games out of it, hopefully. So now you know about that. That's it for me and Matt, and see you next time.